Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Carl. Welcome to Politics in Perspective this week. We have a quick opening statement today because we have two great guests. Harry Lippman, who has a world of experience around the globe, literally, is going to talk to us about the Middle East. We have a good friend of mine, Don Wagner, who's running for Secretary of State in California. Why that election is so important, no matter where you're hearing my voice. But I want to thank Ex America News for running us, worldviewtube.com, AUNTV, and you can get us on YouTube and Rumble. Please share these links so we can grow our audience. Let's get right to my quick opening statement. Republicans, California, and the SAVE Act. You know, the SAVE Act about a national voter ID and citizenship. This week I posted, the fact is that Republicans will not be thought of well in history if they don't get the SAVE Act done. There are things they could have done. They should have, from here on in, need to make it a priority because this country cannot exist without voter ID as a republic. I mean, just think about California. We'll bring something up here. I'll show you the headlines. Why is California still counting? Why? Don Wagner, I hope will answer that question. Democrats are starting to worry about California. Yes, because there's a bit of an eruption here because of how bad things are and how the voting system is terrible. So where are these national Republicans? The SAVE Act is sitting there. It's aptly named. The foundation of a republic is dissent and the right to vote. And those are both curtailed by voter integrity problems. Because if people don't think their vote matters, then they don't vote. And then their dissent goes down. The second prong, if there isn't safe voting for every vote that isn't valid, it cancels a vote that is. So that strikes at the heart of a republic. And the Republicans, and I posted this on Political Vanguard this week. Every day I do, during the week, I do a top four. My top one this week was Trump calls for Thune to pass the SAVE Act. Again, Republicans have the House and the Senate, and I realize the Senate has a filibuster rule. But there are ways to get around that with respect to the SAVE Act. They need to get about doing that because what you see in California is evidence as to why it is so incredibly important nationwide that we get our act together. No other country in the world of any significant size goes mail-in ballots or doesn't have voter ID. There's only one reason why the Democrats are against this, because they're working the system to their favor, not to the favor of the republic. There's my opening statement. We'll be back once again. Join me on Substack. Join me at politicalvanguard.com and pass it along to your friends. Sorry, lost concentration there for a sec. Pass it along to your friends. In the meantime, we have Harley Lippman coming up talking about the Middle East and what Trump needs to get out of a deal or no deal. And we have Don Wagner to talk about saving California in his run for Secretary of State. We'll be right back. Thanks so much for joining. Okay, folks, welcome back to Politics in Perspective. As you know, another Iran deal is in the works, and maybe this one works out, maybe it doesn't. But Iran in the world is not a subject that's going away. We need to understand the Middle East perspective, Iran's perspective, and of course, American interests. And that's why I'm particularly happy today to bring in Harley Lippman, who has a remarkable career, whether it's as a uber successful CEO, whether it is a philanthropist, or the fact that he is recognized around the globe for his perspective in the sense that he has been to so many places, including the Middle East, even Southeast Asia, where he learns the cultures and what is going on and has served presidents in the United States in helping them get that perspective as well. Harley, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
So, you've written extensively about the Middle East, and there's a war. Wars can be good things, they can be bad things, they can have good outcomes, and they could have bad outcomes. Earlier this year for the New York Post, you wrote an article, and that article, we brought it up here. If Trump doesn't strike Iran now, history won't forgive him. That's a pretty definitive statement. Please tell us why you wrote that piece. And there's also some believe that maybe he shouldn't have done this. So please provide us your perspective as to why you thought it was important at that time.
Okay. First, I'll actually begin to disagree with my article. I'll start out by explaining, which has become more popular, but why people think President Trump made a mistake or what the criticisms are, just to give balance, because I'm a big believer in getting all the facts. And then me as a political scientist, I go where the facts take me, and then I could give an analysis based on hard data, facts. So the reason why we shouldn't have gone to war, especially given where we are now, is one, Iran turned the tables on us. We never apparently thought that they would take control of the Strait of Hormuz. And now, why is that important? Because trade in the world is done on the ocean. 90% of world trade is maritime on the ocean. So having freedom of navigation is critical for the world to operate. I can't emphasize that in stronger terms and understanding what's going on right now. So one, Iran turned the tables on us, and they effectively have control of the Strait of Hormuz. If nothing else, then because of fear. When we say they have control, it really means, when you understand it, that ships with oil are afraid to go through because they're afraid that Iran will sink them. And because of that fear, they don't try to go through. So it's the fear is what has kept the straits closed. It's not that Iran has closed a bridge on the straits. There is no such bridge. And the ships are afraid because, one, they're very expensive ships. They carry huge amounts of particularly oil. A quarter of the world's oil travels through this passageway, the Strait of Hormuz. Also, other things travel through it, which is essential: fertilizer, helium, other products and supplies. So, and the second reason is that Americans see no end in sight. They've complained that President Trump doesn't have a strategy. So they can't get their hands around it or understand why we're really there. That's a huge reason. Third reason is we have enough problems at home. Let's focus our money, time, and energy where it really matters, in our own backyard. Four, what did Iran do to us that caused us to go to war and try to damage the country as much as possible? Five, if we won as President Trump said we did, why is it that Iran is still able to fire ballistic missiles and drones at neighboring countries, not only Israel, but their neighbors in the Gulf? And there may be some other reasons. So, what are the reasons why President Trump did it? And why is it the right thing to do? Let's go to that reason now. Why did he do it? Again, I think only that President Trump will be able to tell us when he's out of office and he comes out with his best-selling biography, because a lot of people are not sure. Uh, Clearly, what he'd probably say, which he has said, is that Iran represents a threat to the United States and our allies, and that the United States is addressing four issues or five issues, but two in particular. Number one, that Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. This has been the theme of the last seven presidents. They've all said they will not allow Iran to have a nuclear weapon because of the fear that they'll use it, or they'll use it as leverage to create even more damage and violence in the Middle East and around the world, even if they don't use it. Reason two, uh, why we went to war was uh, missile technology, the ability to reach the United States. That was never addressed in the Obama deal. Reason three, their support for proxies. Proxies are their allies in the region: Hezbollah, Houthi, Hamas. And those are the reasons why the United States ostensibly went to war. Now, that said, uh, let me weigh in and say, and kind of jump to the conclusion, if you will, what I think about it. Uh, I give President Trump a lot of credit because the last seven presidents all knew they had to do something about this regime. And all of them kicked the can down the road and passed it on to the next administration, one way or another. Even the Obama deal, during the Obama administration, they made a deal with Iran. But what was the problem with that deal? One is that it expires. It expires between 10 and 15 years, which is kind of where we are now. So, how could that be a good deal if the deal expires? Because it basically gives legitimacy to Iran to then make nuclear bombs, saying, we made a deal with the United States, we honored it, it expired, now we're going to make nuclear bombs. It'd be very hard to stop them or to do something about it at that point. You'd have to engage in another round of negotiations. And it took 2 years for the Obama administration to conclude that agreement with Iran. Plus, there's a lot of evidence that suggests that they lied and that they didn't honor it anyway. And then President Trump came to office and he threw out that agreement, saying it was the worst deal in history. Now, what's the reality now? The reality is, number one, that Iran's nuclear enriched uranium is entombed in Iran, which is true. It's been bombed to the extent it would be extremely difficult for Iran to get to it. And if they did, we probably would see it through our satellites. So you could argue that we're kind of good to go, most likely for their nuclear terms of their nuclear weapons. That's one argument. Along with that, there are people who say, because of that, what's most important to Iran is the Strait of Hormuz. Because to the surprise of the Iranians, they have discovered strategic deterrence that may even be more important for them than a nuclear bomb. Because by controlling the Strait of Hormuz, they project power throughout the world, and in a way that's less threatening than using a nuclear bomb, because they could influence everybody, even intimidate countries that have nuclear bombs like the United States and Israel. So for them to have control of the Strait of Hormuz is extremely important. And they realize they can make money on it by extorting countries, blackmailing nations into paying a toll to use this waterway. Now you may say, well, why is it so important that we keep it open? Well, one, I already mentioned 20 to 25% of the world's energy travels through this. And if you block it, what does it do? It creates, as we've seen, the price of gas is going up, inflation is going up, and if you keep blocking it, it could even bring on a worldwide recession at some point. So you need freedom of navigation. Now, if you look at American history, this has been one of the most important things for the United States as we're about to celebrate our 250th birthday. Why? The War of 1812 was brought on through freedom of navigation. The British were seizing American ships. We didn't have freedom of navigation. World War I was brought on by the lack of freedom of navigation. The Germans had unrestricted submarine warfare. They were attacking American ships, even though we were a neutral nation at that time. So, having freedom of navigation is critical for the world to operate. And if you allow a country to blockade this choke point, as it's called, why wouldn't the Houthis do it in another choke point? The Straits of Mandeb al Bab, or Mandeb al Bab, I'm not sure exactly how it's pronounced. Those straits are the next choke point that could be closed, compounding the problem greatly. Then you have the Straits of Malacca, where Indonesia is. So these are the main choke points in the world, and it could literally shut down the world's economy. So on that note, maybe I'm going to I'll give a few quick bullet points economically and
Sure.
the consequences of the war. So I'm writing an article, so I have the notes in front of me. So let's start with airlines. Airlines have canceled 2 million seats since the war started because airplane fuel is specific and has been most affected by this more than anything else. Turkey, in particular, airlines have been virtually wiped out because they don't have airline fuel for this. The country arguably hardest hit economically is Iraq because 90% of their revenue comes from oil, and because the Straits of Hormuz is closed, they can't get their oil tankers out. They're not diversified, where, let's say, the Saudis, the Emiratis, Qataris are a little more diversified. Also, Saudi Arabia has actually done better than people think because why? The price of oil is high. They sell oil, so they've done well. Um, which countries have not done well? As you can imagine, the poorer countries, Africa in particular, because of fertilizer. They need fertilizer to be able to grow their crops. Um, what countries have seemed to manage the best because of this blockade of oil is India and China. Why? Because they use coal extensively. Almost 60% of the energy used in India and China is coal. In the United States, it's 9%. The United States has arguably gained the most by this blockade because America is not dependent on oil. We're actually an oil seller, oil exporter. So the United States has done relatively well. And food supplies have not been affected by the war, some people think. Food supplies are mostly affected by the weather. And the weather has been particularly good in the last year to 2 years. So that has actually helped food supplies to be at a high level. Um, what has done well in the war? Gold and platinum as a hedge that has gone up. And lastly, a few quick data points on GDP, which is probably the most important telling point economically worldwide. So in 2025, last year, the GDP of the world was about 3.4%. This year, it's going to be 3.1%. A decline, but a very small decline. Next year, it's projected to be 3.2%. So economically, that gives you a few quick observations as to the impact financially of what the war in Iran has undertaken. So I'll pause
Oh,
for a moment and see if you have any questions or comments.
sure. Well, let's look to the future now, because Iran has been degraded militarily. Not They haven't ended their ambitions. They haven't ended their ability to threat, including asymmetrically through hacking systems and the like. The Middle East chessboard, if you will, is different. They have uh, They have bombed their neighbors, probably allied them against them now in a way that wasn't before. And that's my big question coming out of this. You've been in the region for several decades, meeting with people, coming to understand their perspective. Are the Abraham Accords about to expand? Will these nations come together and build pipelines to get around the Straits of Hormuz? What is the future of the Middle East? Is it one of peace and prosperity looking forward, or are we still caught in this dynamic of a fight among neighbors?
Well, like after all wars or conflict, countries learn and adjust, always. So, what's happening in the Middle East? Already, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and UAE are already developing more pipelines to avoid the Strait of Hormuz. Saudi Arabia and UAE have one already, and they're using it, which has helped them enormously. Meaning, instead of exporting oil, which has to go through the Straits of Hormuz, if you go east, you make a pipeline, you could have the oil go through the Red Sea, which is what has been happening. So that makes the closing of the Strait of Hormuz less impactful to the major nations in the Gulf area. Second, you mentioned that, yes, they've been attacked by Iran. And you imply that isn't that a bad strategy as it gets the Gulf nations aligned against Iran? Well, maybe they will be aligned against Iran and forge new relationships, perhaps with Israel, or maybe it'll work. So if it doesn't work, what'll happen, to your point about the Abraham Accords, it has already brought the United Arab Emirates much closer to Israel. The UAE wants to overthrow the regime in Iran. They've never said that before. That makes them really completely aligned with Israel. And the UAE has a lot of money. They have a lot of innovation. They're one of the world leaders in AI. They're very sophisticated militarily. Uh, they're small, but pound for pound, they punch far above their weight. Economically, they're one of the most powerful uh, economies and wealth, one of the wealthiest nations in the world. But they're very vulnerable. They're very close to Iran, and Iran could devastate their energy infrastructure. So UAE has taken the view of let's get closer to Israel. Iran has turned on us, attacked us. Not only attacked us, I'm speaking on behalf of the UAE for a moment, hypothetically here. They attacked our hotels. They attacked our civilians. We, in our defense, only attacked their military infrastructure. So to the UAE, Iran is a mortal enemy. To Qatar and Saudi Arabia, particularly Qatar, Qatar functions through bribery. That's how they function throughout the world. So to them, they look at it as okay, you know, they have trillions of dollars. So they have to bribe Iran. Iran is cash starved. They need money. So we'll give them whatever they have to give them, 40 billion a year, 10 billion, whatever the number is. Iran needs the money. That may work. Qatar could say, I'm intimidated by Iran. If America's not going to defend us, nobody else will. So we need protection. So I'm going to bribe Iran for safety. So that's why I said to your question, it depends. Each country may have a different reaction to the attack of Iran. And the attack of Iran and their neighbors, you could argue, has been successful. It has intimidated the Gulf nations. They are scared. They see how Iran, with impunity, can take out perhaps a majority of their energy infrastructure. That's how they make money. It could even potentially damage the economies of the Gulf nations so much that it could have a devastating impact on these Gulf nations. They are close to Iran. They see Trump as the only president out of the last seven to engage in such military activity, and he doesn't seem to have the appetite for more war. So if he's not going to go to war with Iran, nobody's going to be able to protect us. Israel, well, Israel punches way above their weight, but they're still a small nation. Remember, Iran is 80 times the size of Israel. So while Israel could do a lot of damage, they're not a superpower. They're a regional power. And they may be a regional superpower in some ways, but they're still very limited. So they may, for practical reasons, try to come to terms with Iran. So you could argue what Iran did was wise and strategic because they got the Gulf nations to push back against the United States and say, whoa, don't attack Iran. Because that's what Trump's saying. They're saying, he says, so he says, the Gulf nations are urging him not to attack Iran because the Gulf nations fear retaliation. So in this sense, you could argue that Iran's strategy is working. You know, Iranians are brilliant at the negotiating table. What they can't win on the battlefield, they win in negotiations. It's a nation that invented chess. They're one of the best negotiators, arguably, in the world, and they have effectively turned the tables on Trump, and they've outmaneuvered him for now. And Trump,
So, so if we go back to your kicking the can down the road, in order for history not to judge Trump that way, what, as a practical matter, what needs to be in any final deal such that not so much that Trump can declare victory, but that the world can move to a better place vis-a-vis the Iranian threat of not the Persian people within Iran, but the uh, the leaders of Iran. That threat has been neutralized. What would you want to see out of that?
well, let me redirect your question slightly and say, what should Trump do, if you don't mind me framing it that way?
Okay.
What Trump should do is finish the job, destroy Iran, and make sure the regime collapses. That, at the end of the day, is the only way you will have peace in the region and in the world.
Okay. So, but Harley, 3 days into this war, you have the Democrat Hakeem Jeffries saying it's a failure. Democrats have been saying that. Republicans are worrying about getting elected in November. The American people cannot suffer, using sarcasm here, we're lobbing bombs 6,000 miles away. And the media has turned Americans against a war because of higher gas prices. Even though I personally believe in many that a nuclear Iran is really not imaginable on how we would manage that, because they don't lumber in their decisions or calculate them the same as Putin or as Xi Jinping. They're so ideologically driven. You can't trust that they wouldn't create a nuclear suitcase,
So,
if you will.
right. So let me respond first to what you said. Hakeem Jeffries says we lost the war. Let me respond to that briefly. The United States had an extraordinary tactical military success. Within a matter of less than a few weeks, they basically wiped out most of Iran's Air Force, Navy, military infrastructure, anti aircraft batteries, and other areas of damage, with virtually almost no losses for the United States. That is remarkable. That was an extraordinary tactical victory, period. What has happened is the media has been extremely negative on this war and on President Trump unfairly. There is Trump derangement. People hate Trump so much that they literally want him to fail in Iran and be humiliated. What they don't realize is that if Trump fails, America fails. And Iran is counting on the left in America to bail them out. And Iran counts on the fact that they see President Trump clearly has no appetite for more military action, and they're using leverage against them, which is why I'd be very surprised as to what a deal is going to look like. I'm dying to see, because I almost can't imagine that it's going to be a good outcome. So Iran will only respond to strength. When the people in the administration said that America's reaction to the downing of a helicopter was proportional, Iran hears weakness. You
Yeah,
know,
can I just stop you right there? What a modern invention of warfare, that things should be proportional. I don't remember any Roman general saying,
Exactly.
"Oh, they killed 3 of us, we should kill 3 of them." That
Exactly.
deterrence is not based on proportion. It's entirely based on the notion that if you do anything, you will be overwhelmed. So why are you going to do it?
So this goes back to what should Trump do, and why. One, Iran represents an existential threat to the United States. No nation in American history has ever been more obsessed with destroying America than Iran. Even China, our number one adversary, doesn't necessarily want to destroy America. They want to economically dominate, but they don't want to destroy America. Iran wants to destroy America. For 47 years, every single day, they say death to America. What's unclear about that? And then I have people say, well, Harley, it's their propaganda. Well, my response to that is that's arrogance. That you think you know better what our adversary means than your own words. Putin was saying he's going to take back what he feels was the Russian Empire that he lost unfairly. He kept saying it. Read his speeches. He's been saying it for 20 years. We were arrogant. We didn't believe he would do it. Hamas said they would go into Israel and kill every Jewish man, woman, and child. They attempted to do it and committed a genocide. Israel was arrogant. They didn't believe them. They didn't think they'd do that. When your enemy tells you what they're going to do historically, generally they do it or they try to do it. So you have to believe them. What happens is we put our head in the ground. We put our head in the sand. We go into denial. Why? Because the thought of war or nuclear bombs coming to America is so frightening that we don't want to hear about it. So what happens is fear gets in the way of an intelligent, logical analysis of an imminent threat. If you have a cancer in your brain, you don't take out part of the cancer. You have to take out all the cancer. And Iran is a cancer. They were building ICBMs to reach one place. It had only one address on it, the United States. It's not about Israel. They have medium range ballistic missiles, and they're using them against Israel. So the war is not about Israel. The war is about the great Satan, the big Satan, America, not the little Satan, Israel. And what do you think they were going to do with those ICBMs of a nation that believes if they die, they go to heaven? They believe in struggle. They believe they go to paradise after death. It's not like during the Cold War with the Soviet Union, there was a doctrine called MAD, Mutual Assured Destruction, which meant if one nation fired nuclear missiles at the other would fire it back, and we would mutually destroy each other. And that idea kept the United States and the Soviet Union never using nuclear weapons because they knew it would result in destruction of everyone. Iran doesn't have that thinking. And they don't care about the suffering of their people. They think they can wait out President Trump. But they're actually wrong. The economy of Iran is cracking. The problem is the American people, because people are impatient. You said people are suffering. I'm going to be a little sarcastic now. Boo hoo. They have to pay 50 cents more or 70 cents more for gasoline. That's to protect their children and their grandchildren, to keep them safe. They're really moaning about that. What a sense of entitlement. Freedom is not free. You want to be protected? We have an enemy. It's called Iran. And they made it very clear who they are. And their very existence is purely about destroying the United States and Israel and then the West. They want jihad. They want the world to be a Shia form of Islam. That's what they're all about. That's what they live for. It's what they breathe for. That's what they're trying to do. So no agreement, no understanding will ever nullify that or change that. They want to destroy us. So the only way you deal with an enemy like that is to destroy them. And they have to feel like they lost and they're defeated. And that's the only way you could get a real peace agreement. The best example I could give is World War I. Germany lost World War I, but they did not feel defeated. They came back 20 years later. And had we stopped them in 1935, for example, 70 million people would have lived. I want to repeat that. 70 million people would have lived who otherwise died. So going to war and destroying this regime, while war is always bad and terrible, this will prevent a much larger catastrophic war. And I'll give you another reason why it will prevent a larger catastrophic war if we take out this demonic regime in Iran. Because China, Xi Jinping, has told his military, be prepared for war in 2027. That's 1 year away. Russia not only has invaded Ukraine over 4 years ago, as we know, but they've already tested NATO. They fired missiles into a NATO nation, Romania. That never happened before. They fired drones, I believe it was, into Romania. They are testing NATO. And if they see the President of the United States doesn't have the stomach for a war that's only been a few months old, that could send a green light to either or both nations to go forward militarily. And that would bring us to catastrophe. That would bring us to World War III. In World War I, there were 21 million casualties, 10 million dead. World War II, there were nearly 70 million people killed. World War III will be hundreds of millions of people killed.
All right. So
if you want peace, you need to show determination in taking out this regime now. And lastly, if I could make one point, by the United States destroying Nazi Germany and fascist Japan, where we utterly and totally defeated them and destroyed them, 80 years later after that, neither nation has any appetite for war. That's why you have closure and you get peace when you utterly and totally destroy your enemy.
So we've run out of time. I just want to quickly add to what you're saying. In my view, we're in a race against technological time because the ability of these countries with very much improved technology to cause damage makes it much easier for them to be provocative. And that's a race against time because 20 years from now, I can't imagine what they'll be able to use to do this. So you have to take
all the more why, I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, why you can't keep dancing around this. You're right. They'll reinvent, reconstitute, obviously, and they're very creative and innovative. And even if we destroyed 70% of their missile and drone capacity, still leaves 30%. That could leave hundreds, if not thousands. And so that's why I say, and the way to do it, you can do it, take out Carg Island, take out their oil facilities. That will break them. They get 90% of their revenue is from oil. If you stop that, they don't have money. If they don't have money, they can't operate. If they don't have money, they can't pay their soldiers. If their soldiers don't get paid, they're much less likely to shoot their own people, which gives an opportunity for the Iranian people, which we didn't talk about, to rise up against the rulers there. And while I didn't mention in the beginning, the other reason to take it, there are two other reasons. I know.
Okay, quickly though, go ahead.
Quickly. So why did Trump go to war strategically? It's a strategy, a hedge against China. China desperately needs oil. By the United States leveraging Venezuelan and Iranian oil, it could prevent them from attacking Taiwan, preventing World War III.
All right, Harley, I appreciate it. We're going to have to bring you back maybe in a couple of months and see whether any progress was made in understanding the points that you are making today, meaning not between you and me or my listeners, but between the administration and reality. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be right back with more Politics in Perspective. Hey everyone, welcome back to Politics in Perspective. Hope you enjoyed the segment so far. I'm particularly pleased in our political roundup section to have a friend of mine who's running for California Secretary of State, knows his way around Sacramento for good and for bad, but understands what is the voting system in California. I mean, he's running for Secretary of State, a job. Here's my friend Don Wagner. Don, how are you? Great to see you.
I'm good, Tom. Thank you for the chance to chat. Good to see you.
So, Don, correct me if I'm wrong. The job of the Secretary of State is to manage the voting rolls. Am I off?
That's that's pretty much job number one of the Secretary of State. Let's make sure our voting rolls are clean and run a clean and tight election.
All right. Well, if that's the job, please tell America about the lawsuit that you're part of. And it's a huge percentage of the registrations in California. By my count, it's 4%.
So I have joined with Judicial Watch and the American Independent Party to sue the Secretary of State because there are over 870,000 what we call ghost voters on the voting rolls. These are folks that get mailed ballots every election cycle because, of course, that's what we do. Or at least these are addresses that get mailed ballots. We have no idea whether there are people there. State and federal law in fact, it really requires the Secretary of State and the registrars to clean the rolls, clean them of people who've moved out of the jurisdiction. We know folks are going to Tennessee and Texas and points just to get out of Dodge. We know people pass away. There are something like 40% of the people in California are not in the same residence this year they were 2 years ago. Those people stay on the voting rolls and get mailed ballots. That's a violation of the state and the federal law. And what we've done is sue Shirley to do what is job number one for the Secretary of State: clean the voting rolls. Until we have clean voting rolls, we cannot trust that all those ballots that get mailed to us every year are going to legitimate voters, folks who have a right to vote in the state of California. And it's an enormous percentage. As you say, it's over 870,000 voters.
All right. So, um, she's not doing it, and you know better than me, and well, we've both been involved for a very long time. This is a chronic problem in California. So to me, it's a failure of will, either on purpose or also a failure to allocate funds and personnel to do it. How do you see it?
Well, I see it as a failure of will. I mean, there are some counties, Orange County, we removed over 100,000 folks off of the voter rolls. And when I say remove, these are people who have not voted in the last 2 to 5 federal elections. So you're going back as much as a decade. These are folks who have not responded to inquiries at that address, whether they want to stay as voters or not. We removed over 100,000. San Diego removed over 300,000 because we know people are leaving California. And there are something like 30 counties in this state that have removed single digits, 2, 3, 5, 20, maybe 100, de minimis numbers of voters. And we know that simply on the natural, there's more turnover than that. And we've demonstrated that counties can do this without disenfranchising a soul. And we're asking the secretary to make sure everyone does it as they're required to do under state law.
So I can tell you personally that a friend of mine, 4 houses up the street, gets 4 or 5 ballots every year. 3 of them in her name, one of them her old married name, on and
Mm-hmm.
on. I had a woman working in my office who would get a ballot from the homeowner before her a decade ago. So this isn't just like an academic discussion. This is a problem because California mails ballots to everyone, and please let the world know why that's a problem.
Well, that's a problem in part because you've got all these ballots that are out there and the system is just awash in them. We allow ballot harvesting, and so we end up
We're going to
un.
stop right there. A lot of listeners don't exactly know what ballot
All right.
harvesting is, but California style is different than New York, but go
Cal-
ahead.
California allows anyone to go anywhere and collect any ballot and turn it in. It used to be, back when we had a rational system and we had absentee voters, you could ask for an absentee voter ballot. You couldn't make it to the polls on that day for whatever reason. And somebody that you knew, somebody that was close to you, a spouse, a friend, could take that ballot in and turn it in. And what we've allowed now under state law is for wholesale ballot harvesting. You get to go out to places and you just knock on the door and say, hey, I'll take your ballot in for you if you want. Hey, you got a ballot maybe that you haven't voted because we're awash in ballots. I'll take it for you. And people are no longer connected to those that are turning in ballots for them. We don't have just sort of the natural chain of command and trust. You don't have someone turning in a ballot that is known and trusted by that voter. And so
Okay,
we'll
combine that with our really lax
right.
registration process.
You have that process and you have a very lax registration process. We can get registered at the DMV, even if you're already on the voting rolls. Different county, you're able to get a second ballot, and we don't clean that first ballot off the rolls. That's part of the problem with ghost voters, part of the problem for the reason for the lawsuit. So you've got all these ballots out there. You've got no protections when someone goes to turn those ballots in, that they actually know the voter and this is the will of the voter and this is a good ballot. There's no one-on-one connection between the ballot and the voter. And that is business as usual in the state of California, which is precisely what the law and the ability of registrars and the Secretary of State to clean the voter rolls is designed to stop. They ignore it. We don't stop it. Indeed, we encourage it. And that's why I'm suing.
Okay, so that's a mess because the entire chain that you discussed, from registration to mailing the ballots to turn them in, provides the opportunity for voter fraud.
Right.
We
Right.
also have NGOs in this state that register people not to necessarily real addresses, and then they all come in a bunch, and anybody can fill them out and turn them in. That's the opportunity to commit fraud.
Tom, we had about 2 weeks ago a woman here in Orange County plead guilty in federal court to paying $20 to the homeless, going out to Skid Row, paying $20 to the homeless to register to vote. And it's my understanding she was registering them at her address. So, of course, all of those ballots come into her residence. Democrat activist, and if you don't think there's a problem with that, well, then you're benefiting from the cheating.
All right. So, what the goal of the lawsuit is what, and most importantly, so folks, I didn't properly introduce him. Formerly in the state assembly, formerly the mayor of Irvine. He is a supervisor in Orange County. So he gets how the state and the counties work together or not.
Or not.
What's your goal with the lawsuit, and why should people join Wagner for California for Secretary of State?
The goal of the lawsuit is, as we said at the top of the spot, to get the Secretary of State to do her job. Because if that job gets done, if we get the rolls cleaned up, then the mere fact that we just mail everybody ballots, at least we know we're mailing ballots to someone who is at that home and is a legitimate registered voter and entitled to vote. And we don't have a system that is just awash in these ballots. And the reason that's a concern, forget whether there is fraud, and there is. The woman who pleads guilty in federal court in Orange County proves some amount of fraud. The dog we had registered to vote in Orange County proves there is some fraud and the possibilities of more throughout the state. As long as those possibilities are there, as long as those ghost voters are there, the people of this state will not trust that the person who takes that oath of office after an election is the one who actually won it. Get those ghost voters off, clean up our voting rolls, know that there is a connection, a legitimate voter with each ballot. And that way we can restore trust to our election system, which the lack of which is just as debilitating as the actual fraud. Tom, I've knocked on so many doors when I campaign for this office and other offices, and people tell me, well, why should I just vote? They're going to steal it anyway, or they just won't count it. That sentiment gets rooted out if we fix our voting rolls, clean them up, stop mailing all these ballots around, stop ballot harvesting, and restore integrity to the system. That's why I'm running.
I can tell you, and that's WagnerForCalifornia.com. I can tell you as chairman and all the roles I've had, including working with you to putting the recall to Newsom on the thing, that people say to me all the time, what is the point of voting? There's cheating anyway. So there is this Republicans stay at home because they don't trust the system. But this fall, there is a huge thing on the ballot, at least from my perspective. So what's your perspective on the voter ID ballot measure and why that would be important to helping you do your job as Secretary of State?
The voter ID initiative is critical. First of all, voter ID is a common sense idea that is the law in the majority of states in the United States. And so we are not in any way out on a limb saying, oh, let's have voter ID. In fact, it's the norm. So what it does is it will help tie a ballot to a voter. When we've got all these ballots floating around out there, but if we've got a voter ID requirement, then we know we can trust that that ballot comes from somebody that we can identify. We won't know what's in the ballot. That's right. Nobody needs to know how you voted, but that the idea of tying a legitimate known voter to that ballot is critical to restoring some integrity to the system. That's voter ID. It's opposed by my opponent. I am very much in favor of it, and so is, according to the polling, about 70% of the state of California. They get this, and that's why this election is so important and so different. I know what Sacramento does. Tom, you've been in this game a long time. You know what they do with an initiative they don't like. They sue to stop it. They simply don't enforce it. They slow walk it. And I'm telling the people of California, if you pass voter ID, and please, I hope you do, if you pass voter ID, I'll go to court if necessary to implement it. I will make sure every one of the 58 registrars around the state are implementing it, and I will help them do it if they need the help from the Secretary of State's office. But we got to, at a minimum, provide that level of voter security. And the last thing I will add, Tom, on that is that that's the step we can take most immediately. That's what's on the ballot in November. That's what we can bring people out to do and take the steps necessary to get started. Because Shirley Weber, my opponent, and the folks in Sacramento aren't going to fix this. It's working for them. I need to get into that office and start putting pressure on registrars to do what they're allowed to do under the elections code and to take this fight to the legislature. Voter ID is something we can do right away.
Okay, folks, I've known Don a long time. He takes on challenges that aren't easy winners. He's got will. And California's messed up system is a choice. And he just said something really critical there, that Shirley Weber and the Democrats, this is working for them. So this election cycle, and John, I'll let you wrap up real quick in the minute we have left. This election cycle, California voters have the ability to put in a Secretary of State, Wagner for California.com, and a voter ID, which I think is the foundation for the turnaround of this state. In the 34 seconds we have left or whatever, what do you say?
I don't think I can say it any better. We have spent 20 years going in the wrong direction, and it's working for the Democrats. This is an opportunity to grab the system by the scruff of the neck, take control. The voters get to take control. And I will tell you, if I'm the Secretary of State and a Democrat wins a free and fair election, I am going to certify that election. I'm also going to do it if a Republican wins. This is the chance for the voters to take control of their government back, and it starts with the most fundamental of our civic rights, the right to vote.
I couldn't agree with you more, folks. Again, WagnerForCalifornia.com. Don, thanks so much for coming on. We'll check in with you in the not too distant again to get this message out. I hope you enjoyed the show today, some interesting perspectives, and also the effort in California needs to be a national effort, because if you can get voter ID in California, you can get it anywhere. Join me at TomDell.com. PoliticalVanguard.com has a complete library of all of our podcasts. See you on Substack. I'm Tom Del Beccaro. We'll be back next week with more politics in perspective.